Welcome to the Haven Collective. I'm J.R. Foresteros, and this is the Beacon Bit. We're continuing our exploration of the parable of the Rich Man and Lazarus, which you can find in Luke 16, 19 through 31. Again, if you haven't read that, go ahead and go read that. There's a link in the description to this video, and also if you just have a Bible, you can look it up there. You may remember a few years ago there was an Instagram account that sort of caught the internet by storm. It was called Preachers in Sneakers. And the account was anonymously run. I think we eventually figured out who it was. But for a good bit of time, it would just post screen grabs or pictures of various pastors who were preaching, often, from their live streams or something like that. And then the next slide would be a picture of some piece of clothing, usually their shoes, hence the in sneakers, right? But sometimes it was a belt or a shirt or a watch or something like that. And it would just be a link to the item and in like the online shop where you could buy it and the price tag on it. And often these preachers were wearing items of clothing that cost in excess of $1,000. And it was presented without commentary. Like it was literally just the picture of the pastor wearing it and then the screen grab. And that was it. And the comments and the outrage that this generated was astounding. Again, this Instagram account kind of exploded. People even outside of the church were commenting on it because there was this sense that there was something uncomfortable about seeing these people who were church leaders flaunting luxury goods. This is when Yeezys first came out, and so there were guys wearing Yeezy sneakers and stuff like that. And it got so intense that sometimes these pastors would respond to the fact that they had been featured on Preachers in Sneakers. And they always responded as though they had been attacked, though again, the account presented these things without any commentary at all. It was as though merely posting the price tag of the clothing item was enough to function as a condemnation of this preacher. I think that's fascinating because it gets into a question about modesty. Now, it's summertime, and if you're in the church world, you're probably used to conversations about modesty being around what women are or are not allowed to wear. When I was a youth pastor and I would take my kids to summer camps, we would always, every single year, get a letter from the summer camp that included a dress code for all of the kids, but there would be like one item for the boys and like 16 points for the girls about what they were not, no spaghetti straps, no bikinis, like all this kind of stuff. And then boys, it would just be like, I don't know, like a belt or something like that, right? Very obviously, this conversation was weighted towards policing and controlling women's bodies. What's fascinating about that is if you go through the Bible and you underline every time the word modest or modesty comes up, and then you look at the context of it, it's never about what women are wearing in terms of sexuality. It's always about what people, and sometimes it's women, but it's often men too, what they are wearing in regards to wealth. A modest person is someone who dresses in such a way that it does not call attention to how much they own or how much they have. There's someone who dresses, again, modestly, right? Not in a flashy way. So that included jewelry or certain colors or things like that. It was really fascinating. And I think about that a lot when I think about this Preachers in Sneakers account, right? Now, obviously, the parable of the rich man and Lazarus is about wealth, like we talked about last week. The fact that this rich man did not use his wealth to help his struggling neighbor Lazarus is an obvious part of the plot. And so Dr. Callis, whose interpretation we're focusing on this week, he asks this provocative question where he says, why don't we police the way people live financially as carefully as we police everything else about them, right? We are quick in the church to condemn someone's sexuality or the way they dress, the way they comport themselves, police their language, police a lot of behaviors. In some of the denominations I've been in the past, it was, what you ate and drink got policed a lot. All of these things that we consider to be very important. And he says, given that financial modesty is such a through line in the scriptures, not just in the New Testament through the Hebrew Bible, why don't we police that as well? And he uses this quote from an author, or a British playwright named Dorothy Sayers. She's referencing the fact that in Rome, in her day, which is the mid to late 1800s, there would actually be people who would stand at the door and they would turn away women who in their minds were dressed too sensually, right, if they were showing too much skin or whatever. And she says this: "Do the officials stationed at church doors in Italy to exclude women with bare arms turn anybody away on the grounds that they're too well dressed to be honest?" That's a provocative question, isn't it? And I think it gets at the outrage that people sort of like involuntarily felt at the preachers in sneakers accounts when we saw these pastors of these churches who were casually wearing different $1,000 shoes or shirts or belts or watches every single week. See, the problem, I think, is that we don't perceive wealth as dangerous. In fact, most of us look at wealth aspirationally. It's what we want to have. It's what we want to acquire. It's what we want to stockpile. And so the question that I want to ask this week in our beacons is, what does it look like for us to take the danger of wealth seriously? What does it look like for us to care deeply about the impact that not money in general, but specifically the accumulation of wealth has on us and on our spirits? Okay, I look forward to this conversation. Again, I think it's going to be really challenging. I think it's going to be really good for us. So I look forward to having those in our beacons this Sunday. Until then, grace and peace be with all of you.